Well, hello, and welcome to my little arty corner of the internet once again. If you're returning, and if you're new to the channel, you are most welcome here. I'd like to thank everybody who has subscribed, hit the notifications button, has left me lovely comments, and has liked any of the videos that I've done. It means an awful lot to me because it means that it's a funny thing because I started YouTube for myself, but hoped that it would help people. And now it's a realization that it does help people and inspire them or give them ideas in some way, or perhaps a different slant on things. And I think that's a very valuable thing. It's an important thing for me, as I've said, because I don't think in words, except for my inner critic. We all have an inner critic. We do. That little voice in your head that tells you you've done something wrong, or you've done something right if you're lucky. Often the inner critic is very negative. Those are the only words I hear. Everything else, it's not done in words. I don't know how it happens. It happens in symbols or images or metaphors or feelings or whatever, but I'm not aware of my thoughts. And because my thoughts aren't in words, there's not that awareness, and to bring them into words is a good thing for me, especially with art, I think, because I've been doing this for a few months now, several months. And I'm getting insights into my artistic mind and heart more than I ever have, I think. And so it's helping me greatly. And that was the main impetus for it, really. Anyway, this is my little sketchbook, my pattern explorations one. It's number one, it's book number one, not pattern number one. I'm not going to fill the whole of this with pattern number one. But I envisage having a series of these over the years. And the rate I'm going, I suspect I'll get one done, one book filled a year maybe. I just used a Posca pen, or a fine white Posca pen, just to label it. That's what I love about these case-bound books, is this here. This I'm sure I could do something with, but it's it's got that texture on it. But that's fine because the inside of it is very flat. So with no further ado, let's get on. So this is where we got to yesterday. I think I've done a bit of tidying up of lines and darkening things here and making a bit more sense of things. And I started drawing here before I had to stop myself again. Angela, no, tomorrow. But what I wanted to do today, I suppose, is to work with different shapes in the middle. And of course I started here with a heart shape, and you can never have too many hearts around. That's my theory on things. So with no further ado, let's get started with this. So with all of these shapes, I always start with the innermost one. And for this, I really do want a nicely curvy, roundy heart. And then I'm going to follow this line and then draw a lovely spiral there, because as far as I'm concerned, you can't have too many hearts, and you also can't have too many spirals. Spirals are one of my favourite patterns and motifs. I mentioned this before, I don't know why, but my favourite fossils, apart from pterodactyls and some other dinosaurs, happen to be ammonites, because where I live in South Wales in the UK, I am not far from the Glamorganshire Heritage Coast. And the Heritage Coast here is Carboniferous era and later. And in the beaches I used to go to as a child, I say beaches loosely because Nash Point is more rocky and pebbly than it is sandy, but it's a beach in the sense that it's a space between land and sea and tidal. Some of the rock beds that are exposed, have ammonites in them by the ton, and I absolutely was fascinated with them. And higher up on the cliffs you can find belemnites, which look like they're pointy shapes. They're the inside of ancient kettlefish type animals. And there's also what they call devil's toenails, which are an early form of I suppose mussels would be the closest analogue I can think of today. But then they don't have a hinge, they're more curled round. They've got more of a mussel shape than a spiral shape. And no doubt others there that I didn't find. A little further east on the coast, to Penarth and Surrey, there's actually been 3 unique dinosaurs found there from a very early era. And one's just been identified after being sort of like lost and forgotten about in collections at the Natural History Museum, I think it was. And it's unique in the world. There's no other one like it. Well, there are. It belongs to a family, but it's the only one of its kind. So it's really interesting. So spirals, me and spirals have a long history. But not just for me, because they appear in the earliest rock art done by humans all over the world. There's something about spirals that just, I don't know, it's just a lovely shape. And that's all I need to say, really. I just like it. Why I like it? Sometimes it is. I mean, how can we say whether we like coffee or not? You know, I have a love-hate relationship with coffee. It has to be said. There are times when I really enjoy it, and there are other times when it turns my stomach. Always like the smell, mind you, mostly, unless it's very overpowering. And soft, things that are lightly flavoured with coffee, like coffee and walnut cake, where you've got that hint of coffee. But I don't like strong coffee at all. If I ever make coffee, it's so weak. It's sort of like basically milky water with a hint of coffee in it. Enough just to colour it with that hint of coffee brown. How can we define whether we like something? Sometimes it's just because we do. We then find words to say why we like it. So, I like the bitterness, or, the aroma, or words to try to describe the flavour, which are often done in relation to other foodstuffs we like, I suppose. Think about how wine is described with all of these comparisons to other things that have a flavour. So I think it's the same here. I just find spirals and hearts are shapes that really do. I just find them pleasing. And with no other explanation really necessary. Is there any other explanation necessary at all? I don't think so. Okie dokes, let's pop a spiral then in a different place in the heart to create that inner border. Does it in a slightly different way, but I can live with that. My pen skills aren't the best today. I woke with a headache. I know what's caused it, and I've taken some headache pills, and hopefully it will ease off soon enough. I've still got some of my morning tea here, so that will help greatly as well. Much prefer tea to coffee, I have to say. Indeed, if I go to a pub or anywhere with people, which I haven't done for a long time, tea is what I drink. In years gone by, it used to be a case of practically forcing the pub or whatever to make tea for you. Nowadays, it's just about everywhere does it, I'm sure. Okay. So I've got a chain of them there. And creating shapes to have a look here. Starting to create shapes and spaces on this page that can be filled in with other patterns or with shadow or whatever, I think. This could be quite interesting. So some flex going there. I am going to turn this on the side so that I can easier access areas and I can see what I'm doing perhaps a little bit better. Do notice this when I've got a headache is my hands do get wobblier. Now you see I've got 4 of those heart shapes, and I'm never happy with even numbered groups of things. So I'm just going to have to add another, aren't I? Again, just pop that in a different place because I can. And it's nice to try that out just to see the difference it makes. That one works more nicely than having it along the edge, I think. But I much prefer the ones at the top. Not that this one, the others aren't cute. I'm sure everybody will have their own opinion on it. I think that would work better if the heart was much bigger. I don't think, I know it would. Because I've done things like this in the past. Not exactly this, but those kinds of hearts. So that will make me happier now. So I've got a string of hearts to deal with at some point. Okay, so let me just turn this on the side. Yesterday was Template Thursday on a Wednesday. It's the day I draw the colouring template for the Facebook group. And yesterday I filmed it, except that most of the time what I was drawing was completely out of frame. And I thought, oh, God, typical, because I didn't check to see. It's really awkward if I'm drawing on large paper to keep everything in frame. It's a lot easier with a small book like this because it just is. I'm just there going, I can't believe that I did that and didn't check. But I get so engrossed in what I'm doing that I forget to check things like that. It's not a natural process for me still. It's like if I was to edit this and wanted to cut out, you know, a lot of the samey kinds of things and, you know, do a little segue or a fade into the next section, the next bit, and do a voiceover, my head just wouldn't get round it. It just doesn't work in that kind of way. So I have tried. I have thought about it and thought about thinking about what I'm going to do in advance and stopping and starting the video at various points, and that doesn't work either because I get so engrossed I forget to do it. I really could do with somebody in my life who loved to edit videos and could do that for me, but I don't. So at least you can say this is raw and honest, if nothing else. So there we are. I've got a lovely chain of hearts. And other shapes, I mean, it can be any shape you want. The idea works the same. So let me have a look. Let's do something that's a bit, because I do love a triangle. I'm particularly fond of these that are sort of plectrum shaped. They've got the rounded corners. But again, I can add a lovely little spiral. And now I'm just going to make it not go all the way round. It's to stop. To join there, and again I'll aura it, and then I'm going to add another one here. That'll be nice, and then these will join automatically together. Now I'm arranging mine in a higgledy-piggledy fashion, which is fine by me, but they could be more organised in a grid-like pattern, I suppose. I much prefer the organic feels, organic kinds of ways of organising things. I do like a grid pattern. I think it varies what it is that I'm putting in a grid. So there we are, we've got 3 all kind of joined together. We really join them together by putting these stained glass kinds of things here. It's like you'd see soldering around the leading of stained glass. I think in Zentangle speak they call it rounding. And it does give a lovely weight, or a lovely sense of a completion there. Something I've used for a long time in art. Since my earliest days, I just find it just gives that feel of those lines have joined together in a nice way. They just haven't just stopped, but there's a deliberate joining. As lead in stained glass, I suppose. That's odd, I didn't want to do two there, but I have, so we go with it. Taking a leaf out of Zentangle's books, there are no mistakes. Only happy accidents, as Bob Ross would say, I think it was. Or creative opportunities. I'm not sure who would have said that, but it is. Everything you think is a mistake, isn't it? It's an opportunity for creativity. You just go with it and see what becomes of it. So that's what I did here, is that I took it and created two sections like this around the one at the top, as we're looking at it now-ish. Well, this one. And then this one really just does need one more around it to bring it into line with the others. I quite like the way that these very bold black intersecting bits automatically give that sense of volume dimension, where things meet. So that's quite nice, like that. That's a bit pointy, so we'll round it a bit more. And that's also the nice thing, is that you can extend the black if shapes look a bit awkward, and as long as you make the black shape make it look like it makes sense, it works. So I'm going to add I think we might be going into the realms of adding a different kind of shape to another. And of course this will now, if I add another one of these, it will go behind this one. And again, I will join them together. There we are. So combining shapes. This I could fill a whole page in, but let's just go one little step further. I've also not, for this one, thickened any of the lines to give me, you know, because this reminds me of the Zentangle pattern Artwyrd, as I said yesterday in some ways. This one I'm not doing any of that shadings with pen, thickening the line. I'm just going to leave it as it is. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add some other shapes. Using the same kind of idea of the originals, I suppose. And this one will end up looking more like Morriseau, I think. And as it does that, I am going to start to join things together, just to see what happens and what things look like. I mean, I could do the same over to the hearts, really. And over to the border, so it's not hanging in space, I suppose. And what this does is it starts to create smaller segments of the page as well where other things could be put in. So I've got, that's a rectangle. We've got bean shapes. That's sort of like a roundy square. But you could do absolutely any shape. Yeah. I do like those bean shapes though. I suppose they're like very rounded hearts, aren't they? Actually they are. There's no suppose about it. That really does make it look like a bean with a sprout growing from it. This is something I like to do, is to split up these lines with little sections. It just, I don't know, it just makes it feel like, it doesn't make it feel like anything. What it does is it makes it feel that things are meant to be imperfect in some ways, is that that whole line isn't supposed to go round, and if one side is slightly thicker than the other, you can make, it's like you make them join. And I quite like that. I'm not sure I'm explaining myself well here. There we go. So there's just a couple there. This page is getting really quite full, isn't it? There we are. So we have a look. I feel the need to add some colour before I do much more today, because I'm up to 22 minutes, so let's have a look. I need a pinky colour, I think. You've got to have pinky colours. Do I go with a, yeah, let's go with a darkish pink colour. Got that one there. Oh, now I've got to find tortillas. I've got some here. A bit scuzzy, but they'll work. So this is going to be interesting because the background is quite greeny. What I'm going to do here is just add a little bit in the corner, and then spread it out a bit. Actually works quite nicely. And over here where the dark line is, the thicker line, that's where I'm going to put the most, because that would be in shadow, and round here as well. The thick lines, I think, help to accentuate this idea of shadow and highlights. Now I've gone into that separating section there, into this bit here, but I'm not too worried, because no doubt I'll go and add some metallic stuff to that. I've got a different colour. Okay, use this one. This is a Conte pastel, which is not water soluble, but the first purple I saw, and it works in exactly the same kind of way. They tend to be, a lot more of the pastel comes off than the Carbothellos when they're used, and there can be a lot of dust left over, as it were, from it. But, that's fine. I can live with that. And I have a way of dealing with it as well, because if you brush it away with your hands, it goes everywhere. But if I use a piece of masking tape, I can pick it up without disturbing any of the pastel underneath, which makes me very happy, because dust everywhere is not a good idea. They're actually fairly similar. They actually work well together, these two colours, I think. So I could even Do a bit of a colour blend perhaps. These chalk pastels I keep going back to time and time again, and I really do find them a pleasure to work with. I do. In a way that I don't necessarily find. Coloured pencils have got their own charm, I'm sure. Well, they do. Everything has its own charm. And purpose. Watercolours and so on do as well, but there's something about these. I think I'm sure I could be a lot more sophisticated with colours and colour blending and using them on a big scale to create some kind of image, which I have done in the past. I've got chalk pastels that I did for A-level years ago, framed downstairs in my room at the back of the house, and I absolutely love them. I have to say that I really, really do. But I don't do big drawings like that very often now. I've discovered this is what I really like, and you know, AS and A-level art, we're exploring my artistic voice and working out what I do like and what I don't like, and this very detailed, very intricate kind of thing is what I really do like. So those have worked nicely, so I know what colours I've used, so I can come back to those. For these other ones, let me have a look. I've used blues and so on. Ooh, what colour goes with triangles? Yeah, don't know. This is the problem. I have a box full of colours. I've used browns somewhere else. I haven't used much in the way of green over here, have I? It's not really that green I want, it's this green. Okie dokes. This is quite a mossy, earthy kind of green, which I quite like. And this is where I get my little sandpaper out. This is what these are used for. And I've got some masking tape on the top of it just to pick all of that fluff and dust up as well. So it does get everywhere. Ooh, I've got like a very soft end to this one now, which is fine. Works nicely for blending it out. This is more sympathetic with the background colour of the page, which is nice. There is some shadow under there, but I need to look for a darker one. Let's have a look at that. This one is more of a green. If I use that one, then I can get that slightly darker colour there. It helps to increase that sense of shadow. Those colours do blend nicely together. Fair play. I don't pretend to be a world expert colourist in any way, shape or form, or in any kind of way. There are people who are far better and far more sophisticated with the use of colour than I am. But then I quite like the idea that you can use colour as part of the pattern, not necessarily as sort of like a realism. I do want to, try to get that sense of volume into these designs, and I can do that with shadow and highlights and bring them to life that way. But I don't necessarily want anything that is particularly realistic in appearance. For these, I'm going to just do a couple more here. But for these, I do want to have shadow either side. These fluffy ends of this tortillon is great. It really does help me to work this in very softly and gently. So that kind of works, but I could do with a lighter area in the middle. Excuse me, you might see my hand and arm go over there. So a little bit of a kneaded eraser. These are used in lots of ways. Graphite and charcoal artists will use them to pick the colour up from areas where the colour is extended into, and I think pastel artists do as well, because it can be hard to stop it spreading everywhere to places you don't want. So that's a subtle highlight. But what have I got here? Oh, this is a souffle pen. So these are a bit of a pain to get started, but once these leave a much whiter highlight than jelly rolls. They're very opaque, and when they dry they leave a raised bump as well, which I quite like. And they also dry and they're waterproof, so that it means that they could be put on before water-soluble colours are used. So I'm going to add some dots here. They sort of go on white, and then as they start drying they go transparent, and when they finish drying they go completely white again. It's best not to ask. Like, it's how the pens work. And I'm going to add some highlights up here. So the souffle pens are from Sakura, who make the jelly rolls, and you can get them in lots of, I say lots, in a number of different colours, and I do have those, and they've been useful. I've used them in never really used them much before, but I did make use of them during the Inktober Tangles challenge, where I used them to both add colour or little highlights, like I am now, but in colour, to some of the variations I did in the tangles there. I even tried using a water brush with them and spreading them out, and that does work as long as they're still damp, and you end up with a shiny sort of like glaze, colour glaze on them, which is quite interesting. So those will need to dry, so I need to be careful, but I would like you to see them as they're dried. So I'm waiting for them to dry. I shall add some colour here to these. If you're familiar with Zentangle and you do Zentangle work and you know how they use graphite pencils for shadows, you can use chalk pastels in the same kind of way. The only difference is you can have them in many colours. I do have black ones here, and I often use those for shadow, but I often go for the grey blues for shadows as well. That works nicely. Now those little dots in the middle, I am tempted to either put souffle there or metallic. I'll decide on that later, but gosh, 34 minutes. You can do a lot in a short amount of time, but I don't know if you can see how the souffle has dried, and you can see distinct white dots there. I much prefer the dots to lines. I've said this before, lines always look harsh to me, whereas dots, the broken dots, it sort of looks like an added pattern as well as a highlight. It's just my preference, just the way I work. So there's some more done here. And this page is getting really quite interesting in its way, because there are variations on a theme of how to, you've got wide enough channels, you can add patterns in, you can use contour lines to develop that sense of volume, dimension. It's the embellishment patterns that come on, and here this is how I worked with a mistake because I let a pen line overrun. And I just thought, okay, we'll have it growing out. But different kinds of media as well. I've used graphitint pencils, I've used Decoline inks here and on these, graphitints here with some of the metallic jelly roll pens with a water brush to spread them out, so you get a subtle sense of metallic. And I don't like colouring with gel pens of any kind because they often end up looking patchy, whereas if you use them with the idea of a paint or an ink, you know, a liquid ink, and you spread them out with the damp brush, you get a different kind of feeling, and I quite like that. It's not as in your face as it would be. And of course I've used chalk pastel pencils quite a lot, both with water if they're Carbothello, because they're nice to be able to spread that colour out a little bit, but also on their own and blending them. So these explorations aren't just about drawing, they're also looking at media and how I can use media in different ways and experiment with them. And if it doesn't work out, I've learnt something. But in hindsight, it may have worked out. I think the one medium I'm unlikely to use in my books, in this book, are going to be alcohol markers, because they will actually go through the paper. I'd like to use both sides of the paper for the explorations, so that the book is full of those. But there's nothing to stop me actually taking smaller pieces of marker paper and using those and fixing them in, gluing them in to the page as well. So that's always something I can do. So I'd just like to say thank you for joining me again. I hope this has given you some kinds of ideas as to what you could do. This is really cute. I'm so tempted to spend my day with a big sheet of paper and using this as sort of like the central part or one side of it and growing it. And I can't because I've got to get stuff done. Even with a migraine. Oh dear lords. But I don't know about you. I'm just smiling now. That's made my morning. But whatever happens, I hope you enjoy it. I hope it gives you inspiration or shows you how to do things, a sort of like how to, because I know that it can be difficult to deconstruct patterns, to work out how they work. And it's always nice if you see somebody else do it, because it gives you that starting point to work on and make it your own. And I guess these are variations of Oysteroid more than anything else. That's what they're turning into, kind of, but with others like the Morriseau and so on. But you know, this would be something I'd have done in the past as stained glass, you know, before I saw Zentangle. It's funny, isn't it, how you know, I've been doing art for longer, a lot longer than I've known about Zentangle, and yet things I've drawn overlap with Zentangle. And I think that's the nature of art, things overlap, and that's how it's supposed to be. You know, things bleed one into another and people create things that are their own way of doing things, and you know, nothing in the world is unique. Not really. There's personal slants on things and things that perhaps are a different way to do things, and perhaps there are firsts that people do, but there's always something similar, I think, something else, you know, something that's led up to that. But anyway, I'm wittering. I'm good at that. So thank you so much for joining me. If you've enjoyed what you've seen and you've got this far, thank you so much. Please give a thumbs up. If you're subscribed, fantastic, thank you so much. If you haven't, consider subscribing. And if you'd like to know when I release a video, then hit the bell button and you should get a notification. I'm not sure how good that works. I've heard conflicting things when I watch other channels, but there's a good chance you will, because I'm trying to do this daily, but there may be days where I can't for one reason or another, and so just bear that one in mind. I just looked at this. I love it's the green and the purple together that's doing it for me as well. They just go so well together there, even though they're not directly together, they just work. Anyway, bye-bye for now. Take care now.